Alright, so today we're going to be working on the governor here. When I had worked on this air throttle before, I had messed with my idle a little bit and it was getting down to about 400. So now I've just readjusted it up to 550, and it's a fairly simple process. This is the end of the spring assembly for your low and high speed on the governor, and this threaded rod here with an Allen key end is the low speed adjust. If you turn it in, it raises your idle RPM. Use this lock nut to get it set in place, and then you'll put your cap back on. Now if you have an air throttle like I do, it's a little more complicated. This is the airline, and I'll show you what tools you need to do this job. For starters, 1/2-inch socket to take the cap off the end of the cover, and you don't really need this, but a 3/8 12-point socket to pull the valve cover off to give you more room, a 7/64 Allen key to hold the idle set screw, and then this is a 7/16 wrench that I have made in order to reach in the end of the cover this way to hold the nut to tighten down the lock nut. And then you also need a 10 thou shim to set the appropriate depth between the air throttle housing and the governor housing. And I took this apart just for fun. So this is the plunger, which activates the high-speed governor. Simply air is pushed into this fitting, which expands this and pulls the high-speed governor. So now I'll have to put all this together. It's a bit tricky. Now, as long as you hold the Allen key steady, it should not mess with your idle setting, because as long as that screw doesn't turn, you should be good. Now, the farther in you get the lock nut, the harder this job becomes, because you've got a worse and worse grip on the nut from this wrench, which I had to grind an awful lot of meat off of to be able to even get in here. I'm assuming there's a fancy Detroit tool for doing this job, and it's not a problem you would have on a conventional engine without an air throttle, but I would still assume that they would have something, or maybe a fuel line socket, sort of an idea where you could travel around the Allen key, but I don't have anything like that. And for doing this job hopefully once or twice, I don't see the point in buying those just yet. The easiest would be if you could get this wrench on a complete 90 degree, and then the technique I'm using here is to hold the Allen key steady with my left hand, and then use my left thumb just to push the wrench, because you don't have any twisting force out here, but the thumb actually seems to be doing a decent job. But the farther into the plunger you get with the nut, the more it cones down, and it forces you to get less and less of an angle. So instead of being square on the nut, you have to start using the tips of the wrench. So here we have our feeler gauge, And we still got about 20 thou to go. The last couple turns are the worst. So there still isn't drag on that shim yet. It's a little bit difficult to tell because this thing does pivot. So if I pivot it all the way up, there's significant drag, but I can't quite pinch it off. So we'll give it another bit of a turn here and try to find our happy medium. Might give that another slight turn. Alright, we're going to call that good. And then we'll recheck our idle. If we have to move it here at all, we will. But we shouldn't have to. So we'll get all our tools and stuff off of the engine and see what our current idle speed is. Alright, so I lost about 25 RPM there. One thing to remember is that while the Allen key will turn out here, it actually doesn't affect the idle that much, because once that lock nut, the inner lock nut, is against the spring assembly, the whole thing is a bit spongy, but it doesn't actually affect the idle. When I gave this thing about a quarter turn when it was running just to see what would happen, it actually didn't affect the idle speed at all. So really, you can't adjust the idle out here, even though it would be foolish to try. You have to take this off like I did now. But my idle speed's around 525. It's supposed to be around 500. I don't mind it being just a wee bit higher for letting the clutch out. It's nice to have a wee bit more. It's a lot better than the 400 or 375 that I did have, so we'll call that good. Now these are a shouldered bolt to hold on the valve cover, so there is no Torx back on them. They simply count on this rubber isolator to keep the cover in place. And again, like most things, I like to get everything started by hand as much as I can. Make sure nothing's cross-threaded or the threads are dirty. Something's going to pile up, or I just plain old got it wrong. We'll do some more testing in the morning to make sure nothing's out of whack in the governor, which it shouldn't be. And we'll put the intakes back on and call it good. So thanks for watching.